Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Cybersecurity Focused Topics Social Engineering, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted, but if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box and we will address them at the end of the session. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session, Quiana Gainey. Quiana is a 20-plus year IT and cybersecurity industry veteran and has served as Chief Executive Officer for Secure Tech 360, located in Springfield, Virginia, since its inception in 2010. She is also the Cyber Industry Specialist for the Virginia SBDC. Welcome, Quiana.
Thank you, Sheila, and welcome to everyone. Today's topic, we'll talk about social engineering. Why we chose to make this a cybersecurity focus point with all of the things that's going on with social engineering in the news. Every day you're seeing something different about different risks. So we're going to have a conversation about it. We're going to leave here with some tips, some tricks to safeguard your business. Because as you can see, whether you're small or you're large, social engineering is definitely a risk that we all have to encounter at some point in our business ventures. Next slide. So as she introduced me, I've been in the industry about 20 years, and I have worked in several capacities with the local, state, and federal government. And I've also been able to serve our small business community and also nonprofit. So I have a lot of information and knowledge about how to be able to safeguard your business regardless of the size. And so today's topic, we're going to talk about that, give you some best practices. We'll end it with some questions and then some additional contact information if you want to have either more discussion about it, or if you have something that maybe you don't want to talk about on camera, then we can also help with that as well. Next slide. So yes, one thing about my new role here at the Virginia SBDC is being a small business advisor. So we're here to help you navigate that. We have some great resources on our website. And if you need additional help or services, you can always email help@sbdc.com. Next slide. So we'll jump right in. We'll talk about social engineering. So when you hear the word social and you hear the word engineering, sometimes it can mean different things to different people. I'll give you an example. Some people think that social engineering is just maybe a hacker just trying to just get into your systems using different tips and techniques, maybe trying to contact, if you have like a help desk, if you're in an IT department, trying to contact a help desk to be able to get access to accounts by, masquerading or pretending to be someone or something that you either know, trust, or something that is familiar to you, right? And one of the biggest defeats with that is being able to educate our employees about it, but also in real time, having the education for ourselves if it happens to us as well. Because it doesn't necessarily have to be just your tech people. It could be just anyone working in your organization. Next slide. So again, the art of it is the craft of influencing individuals to reveal sensitive information. So they work very hard to try to get information about you. So they could be looking at your social media, they can be looking at your website, they can look, maybe even come to even some engagements that you're having, like if you're having like a social engagement at your organization, they get very crafty. I've even had some folks that even experienced dumpster diving, where they had actual attackers go into their actual trash cans and try to find sensitive information so that they can either find a way to penetrate your organization. They also use tips, things like phishing emails. We see them all the time. You look very closely, you're like, something's off about this email. It looks like from something familiar, maybe from someone or a trusted organization, or even sometimes I'll see one, I use Outlook 365, and usually I'll see something that says, oh, change your password, and you have, it has to be changed in 24 hours, contact this information, click here. Although it may seem like it may be something that you need to do right then and there, I always say, think before you click. Think to yourselves, just like with anything, why would Office 365 be sending me a personal email, right? When it looks strange and it doesn't feel right, take the time. Always, I believe in verifying and validating before you hit or click, especially if it's going to take you to another page, or it's also asking for any sensitive information. And then sometimes they'll pretend to be a trusted individual to gain access. So it may be a phone call from someone that you trust. I even had an email that came from an organization that I work with. And when I looked at the email was very close to the individual's email. But then when I looked at the body of the email, I saw some misspelled words, I saw a phone number, and then it was also in a tone that I know that this individual would never send me an email about this particular, wanting this type of information. So I immediately sent it to junk. I made sure that I checked my spam filters to make sure that any emails that came from this particular email address or was strange in nature would go into junk, or I would highlight it as spam. So there are features within your Outlook 365, as an example, these spam filters that you can put on to be able to combat some of these social engineering. And then pretexting, creating a fabricated scenario to obtain sensitive data or access, posing as a coworker in need. I know I've seen the movies where you see people in crisis and they'll call in, and they're probably seeing like this, something that's an emergency that's going to be like life or limb, or someone's going to die, and they need you to make a decision right here or give some information. And usually you'll see people, because if they're trying to gain access, they'll say things that probably will make you feel as though it's something that you have to respond to right then and there. And 9 out of 10, you always see sometimes they'll just give over the information. So even if it's a situation that seems like this person needs access or data, take some time, validate, verify, start asking them questions. See if they have a phone number that you can call them back. Do a quick Google search on the side with their name and their information to see if this is a real organization. Do your due diligence before you hand over any type of sensitive information. And then once you're even training your employees, go over these scenarios all the time. I go over them in your staff meetings, go over them when you're in processing your employees. We also, for us, we do rules of behavior of how I want my organization to be ran, but also how I want my employees to respond to things. And so we also test those scenarios out just to see if there's some additional education or different things that we need to improve our security posture. Next slide. So say to yourself, what is MGM, Verizon, Equifax, and Capital One? Outside of them being multi-billion-dollar conglomerates, what all do they have in common? They've all fallen victim to social engineering attacks. As you can probably imagine, they've probably spent millions of dollars on infrastructure. They probably have guards. They probably have all different type of network tools and real-time tools that are, aggregating data in real time and being able to safeguard there with firewalls and all of the things that they're doing to have, this defense in depth. And even with the most sophisticated budgets and out of these world protections that you can have in place, they've all fallen victim to just the 3 things that we named in the previous slide, to social engineering attacks. You saw how MGM just recently, I know they had an incident in 2019, but just a few weeks ago, how they were down for days. And it was because a hacker went to the social media page of someone that worked at a help desk and was able to contact that individual and be able to gain access. And how many people were impacted by that? There were shows that were canceled. There were people that couldn't process their credit cards. They couldn't even get access to the casinos. How much money do you think that simple tactic cost MGM in the long run, right? In Equifax, it was a significant data breach where personal information, including social security numbers, of 147 people was exposed. 2019, Capital One, another 100 million customers. 2020, there was 96%, it was engineering attacks that infiltrated Verizon, okay? So if you can understand the magnitude on why social engineering is and being able to protect yourself from these attacks are so important, regardless of your size, regardless of your industry, agnostic to your user population, where you have to put some defense in depth practices and even ways to handle social engineering attacks. And the best way to do that, as I explained earlier, is through education, making it a part of your everyday, or even making it something that your employees understand the impacts that it could possibly have to your organization. For us, even as a small business owner, a significant breach like this could probably mean the end of our business, right? Fortunately, these large companies were able to recover, but what about the loss and reputation from their customers? People felt a little, like they didn't feel secure with giving them their information. How much money did it cost for them to be able to fix these issues afterwards, right? I know with Equifax, I was affected by it. They had to get me a credit monitoring for a year. They had to do all these different things in place. How much money did that cost them over time? So when we're talking about social engineering attacks, don't feel as though that it can only happen to you because you're a small business, but you see that we all sometimes, even large or small, can fall victim to these attacks. Next slide. So how do you safeguard your small business against social engineering attacks? Preventing social engineering in your small business is crucial to safeguarding sensitive information, maintain the security of your operation, but first and foremost, as we talked about earlier, employee education is key. Conducting regular training sessions to raise awareness about common social engineering tactics, even sending out, I even do an annual security training where I put together what examples of what phishing emails look like, what pretexting look like, so they can see it in real time. And we even do exercises where we look at the actual emails and see what was wrong with it and see who can spot what was wrong with it. And we make it fun and we make it interactive so it doesn't seem like, oh, it's just another task. And I didn't want cyber education to be just you meeting your annual requirement, you just going along with with the slides and not really retaining the information, because I wanted my organization to understand and be able to protect themselves if these things happen, and to teach your team how to recognize and how to respond. So having things like an incident response plan is also crucial to this, right? Who, what, when, and how. What to do if you fall victim to this. What to do if something like this happens in real time. And then also, I believe in implementing strict access controls. So what that means is making sure who has access to do the job that they need to do, they only have access to that, right? Enforcing the principle of least privilege. Anyone that have a government background or a military background, they also talk about need to know. Not having everyone know everything, and making sure there's access controls between maybe the HR department or maybe the finance department, or if it's just even yourself. Making sure that you even segment some of the information and placing it in places that it's not all together, and making sure there's strict access controls so that others cannot have access to that information. In my organization, we use SharePoint. So the HR department has a SharePoint site. The finance department has a SharePoint site. Those two never meet because they don't necessarily need the same information. Now, there may be some things across the organization that they may have the access to. So we have a folder just for that. But even in those folders, we only have certain users within those folders. So that's another way that you can do it as well. Maintain a strong password policies, right? Some organizations, depending on your budget, you can use two-factor authentication. You can use multi-factor authentication. You see that with everything that we're using right now, right? So you go into your bank, the bank sends you a code so that you can log into your bank to find your information. Why did they have to enforce that? Because there were things that were happening, and people were gaining access through the transmission of them just putting in maybe a regular password within the system. So they had to use some multi-factor authentication to do another layer of added security. And then also doing things like regularly updating and patching your software systems can also eliminate vulnerabilities that attackers may exploit. So if you have, I know I'm guilty. Sometimes you'll see the reminder to say update to the latest patch. There are a lot of different updates and patches that these software applications have, because there are things that they're maybe been tracking in real time, and they want you to get to that access level, or things that they've found over time that they need to put maybe different patches in place to be able to eliminate potential vulnerabilities, right? And then also, like I talked about, if there are incidents where you receive these phishing emails and they'll say to you, like, report it. Those reporting functions that you report to maybe Outlook 365, that's an example. They're also use that information to know what to eliminate as possible vulnerabilities. So also doing your due diligence to being, to responding to those type of things when there's questions about, what have you been affected by this, right? So if you see something, if you're experiencing something, report it. That's how we can make the whole infrastructure secure for everyone. And then establish a culture where people are not afraid to even talk about, potential social engineering attacks that came, so they can come to you to talk about it. So I have an open door policy, and I think that that's a great way to be able to have your employees feel comfortable to come to you to talk about things that are happening or things that they have noticed that may be a little off, or even we talk about just common things like how many phishing emails did you receive this week, or how many phone calls that you thought were strange in nature, and how did you deal with that, so that it's an open forum so that everyone can learn from each and every one, that they can find something different that maybe they didn't think to do, but someone else did, right? So just keeping our open lines of communication. When you combine these measures, you can significantly reduce the risk of falling victim to social engineering attacks, regardless of your business size. So as you'll still see throughout the theme of this whole webinar, is that the most crucial part of protecting yourself against social engineering attacks is employee education. Education is key to it. Making sure you are regularly doing these training sessions, making sure you are testing. If you have an incident response plan, test your incident response plan. Sometimes we'll put together a plan and we don't take the time to go back and test it regularly, or even when a significant incident happened. You don't have to wait until the whole year goes by. If there's things that are happening in real time, if I see things that are happening like in everyday news, I'm an advocate. I watch the news every morning just to see what's happening in the world. And if there's things that I see, common things, I may even put out a newsletter or even just an email to my employees about different things that they should watch out for. Making sure that it's just a part of our, awareness. And awareness doesn't have to just be when you initially get trained on cybersecurity and when you do regular training. It can be throughout, throughout the year, so that you're definitely keeping your employees educated, one, and then you're keeping up with the latest trends. Next slide. So again, talked about some additional best practices, employee training and awareness, conducting these regular training sessions, teach employees how to recognize common social engineering tactics, encourage a culture where people can verify and identify unfamiliar individuals as they're requesting information, even if it seems legitimate. I always say, if someone came and knocked on your door and said, can you hand me over your credit card? You would be like, I don't know you. Why would I hand over my credit card? It's the same feeling that you feel when you get those emails, or when someone is calling, asking for information about your organization, even if you may even be familiar with them. If they don't have a need to know, like we talked about, if they don't have, if they haven't been given, access to that information, if it seems suspicious in nature, make sure that you verify and validate that they definitely have they have a need for the information that they're requesting. And then creating strong access control policies, regularly updating those, making sure your permissions align with your changing business needs and employee roles. So how you probably initially set up your business, and as we grow and evolve, your business needs change. The same thing goes with your access control policies. The same thing goes with your cybersecurity training. The same thing goes with just keeping, abreast of your new employee roles. You may have someone that may get a new promotion, making sure that they have the correct access to the information that they're needed. So sometimes you'll have, and I know even for myself, we'll have someone that maybe get promoted and they still have access to certain folders. You have to make sure that you do your due diligence if they're no longer in that position and they don't need access to that information and it's no longer required for their job. Remove that access. Don't keep that access open. And then secure communication controls that we talked about. There are ways that you can use encryption technologies to do email communication and to even transfer sensitive data information. So you're not sending over information under channels that your transactions are not secure, especially when you're doing sensitive information. I always say anything that is personal in nature, anything like credit card information, financial information, confidential information, anything that you deem confidential in nature. And then also even tagging that information, like even on your emails or even on your paperwork, putting what that level of information or how it should be shared. Add that to your paperwork as well. And even in your emails, a lot of people, you see them now very common in their signature block, they'll put like how to handle the information if you receive the information. Those are great ways to also, have best practices of defending yourself against social engineering attacks. Implement multi-factor authentication if you're using critical systems, or two-factor authentication like we discussed earlier. Next slide. So in conclusion, social engineering is a crucial element of all businesses, regardless of your size. As you can see, we saw some from very large corporations that have experienced this, to the disruption that it's caused for their infrastructures, to their employees, to their customers, to their stakeholders, and even to their public reputations, right? Negative association with cyber attacks and fraud is running rapid. Social engineering is one tool that they use that doesn't cost a lot of money, but it takes time for them to learn more about your information. So be very careful. I always say, even when you're using things like social media, be careful with the things that you post. And even like for myself, I've always worked in very sensitive organizations. So I was very cautious about where I worked, what I post about what I worked. Even some of the people that I work for or with. So just keep that in mind, because they also can use that type of information as well. And then build trust with your customers and your relationships. That also drives growth. And then, make sure that you just find different ways to enhance your employee training, that just you can make sure that you stay connected with the latest trends. And then also, have an understanding that, human behavior is the one thing that we can't put, I always said you can't put technology behind. It's something that we have to make sure that we're educating our end users, we're educating our community of even partners that we have that within our organization on how we want our data to be handled, how we want our information to be handled, make sure that we're, communicating that as well, so that we're building a trust system. That's usually will be the key to us having a long, viable business. And then also being able to combat some of these social engineering trends that are happening. Any questions? And I went over a mouthful.
We don't have any questions in yet. So if anyone would like to drop a few questions, I'm going to share some links here. Let's see, on your screen. Don't worry about copying them down. We're going to send out these slides and the presentation in an email follow-up, so you'll have them all handy. But go ahead and pick Quiana's brain while we have her here.
And then also, I know we're ending September and we're going right into my favorite month. It's not Halloween, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And so one way that we can keep out the spooky hackers and during this spooky time is to make sure that we use this as a time to reflect on our current infrastructures and to look at our security policies and procedures, educate ourselves about the things that we talked about, like how do I put together an incident response plan? How do I put together a security awareness training program for my employees? How do I put together, disclaimers on my emails? All these different things that we have resources that are available to us. So some of those links that we provided, there are a wealth of information about some of the things that we've discussed. And then even on our Virginia SBDC website, we have access to a plethora of information to help you get started. Because sometimes I know even as a small business owner, we have so many things that we have to worry about. And we're like, okay, this is just another thing. But as we've seen more and more, that cybersecurity is becoming more and more crucial to the survival of our business, right? So we have to be proactive with that. So just how we take the time to put together a business plan, take this time during Cybersecurity Awareness Month to put together a security plan. If you have one, maybe take some time to see if there's new things or new requirements, new operations, things that you introduce to your organization. Take the time to assess those risks to see if there are anything that additional mitigating countermeasures that you can put in place to be able to combat those risks. So take this time. We will also be coming to you with some information and also even some additional webinars doing Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So stay tuned for that as well. And most of the links that I provided as well, they'll have a plethora of different events. If you have time, take the time. I always say an educated CEO is the best CEO. And we can always learn something more than with these amazing webinars they put together to be able to, help us. Because once we know that as a nation, we have critical infrastructure, if they're secure, then we're all safe, right? So we all want to be somewhere we can feel safe and secure, because when Verizon goes down, they're my MSP. So when they went down, I was impacted. When Equifax went down, I was impacted, right? MGM, I was impacted, right? I was supposed to go to a concert. The concert was canceled. So things like that, it could be even for our leisure time. It could be for things that we use in real time. So if we all can do our due diligence and be able to be educated about how we can, take down these spooky hackers in the spookiest month of the year, which is October, let's make that our time to be able to strengthen our cybersecurity so we can have a great Thanksgiving.
There you go. Fabulous. Well, yeah, so no questions have popped in. So I guess we'll go ahead and close out. And we do look forward to Cybersecurity Month, because I know you have tons of information to share. And like you said, on Facebook Live, as well as in our webinars. So I do want to thank you, Quiana, and thank everyone for attending today. You will receive an email with a link to the recording and the slides. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. This webinar and other SBDC resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. And we do hope to see you at our next session and throughout October on Facebook. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye. You too. Bye.